censorship.
Well,
Yeah.
if they don't view the Uyghurs as people, then as humans, there's no human rights violation, right?
Oh no, the 56 ethnic minorities of China are very happy. Every year they have a wonderful New Year's show where they bring them all out and have a little dance number. Or they'll give the BBC a guided tour of these alleged concentration camps. And they're singing and they're getting, job skills.
And they're dancing for the camera with big bruises over their eye. Like, it's
But
very...
it is, but it's very hard for foreigners to see what's actually happening in China.
I think you have to break it down, yeah.
You can't, you just don't get access as a foreigner. And
Right.
the last time I was in mainland, which was more than 15 years ago, it wasn't even so closed off. But at the time, they wanted foreigners to be in certain parts of the big cities, and they wanted you to be on tours, and they didn't want you to go outside of that. And if you did go outside of that, the authorities might try to get you to go back to your hotel, and now it's even more restrictive, where they keep journalists out of going to villages where controversial things are going on. They keep, essentially a foreign reporter can't possibly get into Tibet or Xinjiang anymore. So it's just the people who are going to China, the politicians, the business people, the academics. They're going to the cities. They're getting on these high-speed rails. They're staying in the five-star hotels. They're eating at nice restaurants. And this is the part of China they see. And so they have a very skewed view of what China is.
Okay, well, so here's a bit of optimism for you. You're saying you're pessimistic. Yeah, Matt's absolutely right. It's hard for foreigners to know what's happening in China. The reason I started China Uncensored in 2012 was because everything we've talked about tonight is really not new. It's been going on for decades. I started the show because Americans didn't know about it. Americans weren't talking about this and just thought China was like, developing country, it's a democracy, right?
There's a president.
There's a president, but now you talk about this Pew research, and it's totally shifted. People are talking about the Chinese Communist Party in a way they were not.
Yeah.
Even 8 years ago, even 5 years ago.
It's interesting, the president thing, because I have had multiple conversations with friends of mine who were didn't know that China didn't have democracy because he's called him President Xi Jinping, even though the word in Chinese is not president, it is chairman of the state.
Right.
So, the word that they use in Chinese to talk about Xi Jinping, there's a different word that they use for president that they use to talk about Biden, or it's the word is 总统.
Then why do we call him president? It's propaganda?
Because they started in the 80s, they started translating president, the 主席, which is chairman, as president, officially, the official translation.
In China.
In China. And so...
It's manipulation.
Yeah, so they twist the language.
Wow.
Another example, I want you to tell the story about the struggle, Xi Jinping and the struggle.
Right. Yeah, so Xi Jinping recently gave a speech to young Chinese Communist Party members where he told them, you have to really believe in the party and carry on the strong traditions and spirit of the party. And the Chinese language, in the English state-run media reports, it was and he was inspiring them to talk about, how great the party is and serve the people. In Chinese, there was the term that he kept bringing up was the term struggle, which is douzheng, which is a Marxist-Leninist, Chinese Communist Party idea of using the dialectic, right? Two opposing sides, and then they have to struggle, and one has to win against. So it's oppressed versus oppressor, or proletariat versus bourgeoisie, whatever. So it's in China, the Chinese Communist Party will have, in the Cultural Revolution, you had to douzheng against the counter-revolutionaries, this idea of struggling against an opposing side. So in Chinese, Xi Jinping said struggle the whole time during the thing. Young Communist Party members must remember this, to struggle. The Communist Party's tradition of struggle, all this stuff, completely wiped out in English because they don't want to make the Communist Party look like that.
So we look back at history and we know the Cultural Revolution, the Cultural Revolution was horrifying, struggle sessions and all that stuff. What was before Communist China? Was it also an oppressive system? Was the government horrible to its people?
Well, people kind of mistakenly talk about Chinese history like it was this monolithic thing, when in fact it was very diverse over thousands of years. And there were definitely times where the society was more prosperous and stable. There was times where it was more oppressive. Like we started talking about the masculinity thing. And like in a lot of articles I was reading about that, the sort of Western take on that was, well, in China they believe that, yang, masculine, is strong, and, yin is weak, and yin is women and should be weak and submissive. And that's not even really accurate. That's a complete misunderstanding of these ancient Chinese principles. Like yin and yang are supposed to be in balance. In many martial arts, they say, and Taoism says, the soft overcomes the hard. So soft yin does not mean weak.
Right.
So, golly, what was I trying to say?
Well, I was asking the government before the Communist Party, was it oppressive?
Well, I mean, which government, right? Like which of the dozens of...
Immediately preceding the
Oh,
Communist
so the Republican period.
Is that what it was?
It was horribly corrupt. It also was dealing with World War II and fighting Japanese.
Right, and fighting communist
and
subversion.
the
I mean,
guerrilla army.
this year marks 100 years since the formation of the Chinese Communist Party in 1921, which was connected to the Soviets, which the Soviets had tried to, start the third Communist International, the Comintern, and get that branch going in China, because at the time the idea of the Soviets was we're going to have communism spread around the world, so they were starting all these party cells. So the Qing dynasty fell 1911, and then it was followed by a little bit of chaos, and then the Republic of China came up. But within a decade, you had the Communist Party starting and essentially sowing chaos throughout the country to the degree that they were able to. Sometimes working with the Republic of China government, sometimes fighting against them, but always, even when working with, they were subverting it from within.
Yeah.
And so there was no real chance for the Republic of China government to be a fully functioning government. And it was a very difficult time. And I'm not defending some of the things that happened there, because there were some challenges. But
it's the classic Communist Party tactic of, the Republican period of China. It was corrupt. There were definitely issues. There was wealth inequality. So the Communist Party uses that and says, hey, these guys are oppressing you. This society's, these are the bad guys. Hey, and Mao would go to the poor peasants in the countrysides and promise them a better future, a more equal future.
Now, the elites of that period, the ones who, towed the party line, were they spared?
Oh, I mean, the biggest victims of the Communist Party are Communist Party members.
I mean, even before the Communist Party actually ruled the country, there were tons of purges within the party.
The Yan'an rectification, that basically meant thought control and thought reform and brainwashing. That was kind of where